If God is dead, everything is permitted. That's what scares them.
Well, on the contrary, that assumes that human beings have no feeling about what is right and wrong. Is the only reason you are virtuous because that's your ticket to heaven? Is the only reason you don't beat your children to death because you don't want to go to hell? It seems to me that it's insulting to human beings to imply that only a system of rewards and punishments can keep you a decent human being.
If there is no God, why do you spend your whole life trying to convince people that there isn't? Why don't you just stay home?
Was the
Can you repeat that?
was the question?
The question is, if there is no God, why spend your life and career trying to refute that? Why not just leave it alone and stay home? Fair enough.
Well, it isn't my whole career, for one thing. It's become a major preoccupation of my life, though, in the last 8 or 9 years, especially since September 11, 2001, to try and help generate an opposition to theocracy and its depredations internationally. That is now probably my main political preoccupation.
I would like to think, I don't believe that I'm ever going to heaven or hell. I think that when I die, there will be nothingness. That's what I firmly believe. That does not mean that I have the impulse to go out and rob and steal and rape.
People who make this case that that was the beginning and that there had to be something that provoked the beginning, do you give them an A at least for trying to reconcile faith and reason?
I don't think they're reconcilable.
What do you mean?
Well, so let me say that differently. All efforts that have been invested by brilliant people of the past have failed at that exercise. They just fail. And so the track record is so poor that going forward I have essentially zero confidence. Near zero confidence.
I would say the greatest misconception about atheism is that we're not nice people. I think that a lot of people think that morality comes from religion. Religion teaches that morality comes from religion, and therefore if you don't have religion, you don't have morality. So I think the greatest misconception of atheism is that we're not nice and or immoral, which of course cannot be the case. It cannot be the case because all the data combats that.
If I could ask you, if there was one thing you wanted people to remember that you could say about science, what would that be?
That the universe is knowable, and one need not appeal to mystical, magical forces to account for things. Even if a day arises where something unfolds in front of your eyes that you cannot explain, just because you cannot explain it does not mean it is being driven by mystical, magical forces. It just means it's being driven by laws of physics that we know and you have yet to learn, or that we have all yet to discover.
My question is, given all these demotions, what is your personal religion, or is there any type of God to you? Like, is there a purpose, given that we're just sitting on this speck in the middle of this sea of stars?
No, I don't want to duck any questions. And I'm not going to duck this one. Even though I have high religious personages who are close friends of mine in this room. But let me ask you, what do you mean when you use the word God?
Well, I guess what my question, it's like, is there a purpose for, I mean, given all these demotions, why don't we just blow ourselves up?
Why don't we?
Yeah, what is our purpose? I mean,
let me turn the question around. If we do blow ourselves up, does that disprove the existence of God?
No, I guess not.
So, if you've read The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, turn with me in your book, God Delusion, to chapter 2, verse 1, the first sentence of The God Delusion.
says, "The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully." And I agree with Richard Dawkins 100%. If that God did exist, we have a moral obligation to denounce the immorality of such a tyrant.
Then I'll give you one final thought experiment. This is what you have to believe now, if you're a monotheist. Because we now know things we didn't used to know. We know that the human species could be as much as 200,000 years ago. Did it become separate from the Cro-Magnons and the rival pre-human species? Could be as little as 100. Richard Dawkins thinks 200,000. Francis Collins, who did the Human Genome Project, who's, by the way, C.S. Lewis kind of Christian, thinks 100,000. All right, I'll take 100. I'll take 100. Here's what you have to believe. For 100,000 years, humans are born as a primate species. Expectation of life, what, 25 years for the first few 100,000 years? First few tens of thousands of years. Infant mortality, rife. Microorganism disease, terrifying. Earthquakes, volcanoes, extraordinary. And fights over land, over territory, over food, over women, over tribalism. Frightening too.
Mr. Ham and his followers have this remarkable view of a worldwide flood that somehow influenced everything that we observe in nature. A 500-foot wooden boat, 8 zookeepers for 14,000 individual animals, every land plant in the world underwater for a full year. I ask us all, is that really reasonable? You'll hear a lot about the Grand Canyon, I imagine, also, which is a remarkable place, and it has fossils. And the fossils in the Grand Canyon are found in layers. There is not a single place in the Grand Canyon where the fossils of one type of animal cross over into the fossils of another. In other words, when there was a big flood on the earth, you would expect drowning animals to swim up to a higher level. Not any one of them did. Not a single one. If you could find evidence of that, my friends, you could change the world.
I'm wondering if you believe in God or a higher power of some form.
I've spoken with people who have had deep religious experiences, and there's a certain vocabulary that they draw from. They talk about majesty and being humbled and being awed. And I look at the universe and I'm using all their same vocabulary. And I feel sort of energized and lifted. I wonder if it's stimulating the same part of the brain. This is a question I've actually formally posed to neuroscientists to sort of check this out. These are the folks that have put electrodes in your brain and see what excites one region versus another. Every account of a higher power that I've seen described of all religions, okay, that I have seen, include many statements with regard to the benevolence of that higher power. And when I look at the universe and all the ways the universe wants to kill us, I find it hard to reconcile that with statements of beneficence. So personally, it's hard for me to make that connection.
For 95,000-96,000 years, heaven watches this. With folded arms, with indifference, with coldness. And then around 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, but only in really barbaric, illiterate parts of the Middle East. Not in China or where people can read or think or do science. No. In barbaric, illiterate, backward parts of the Middle East, it's decided we can't let this go on, we better intervene. If there is a single person in this room who can bring themselves to believe anything remotely like that, they convict themselves of being, first, very stupid, and second, very immoral. And thus it seems to me that the case for divine intervention and for the supernatural falls, and that we should be glad that it's fallen. And thank you.